U.S. food and agricultural exports are projected to increase by $2.2 billion with full implementation of the U.S. Mexico-Canada agreement. That's according to the U.S. International Trade Commission report. Joining us now is Dave Salmonsen with the American Farm Bureau. Thanks so much for joining us, Dave. What are your major takeaways from this report?
Well, what this report from the International Trade Commission did that was different from previous reports is they put some numbers behind rule changes. Now, part of the $2.2 billion you just mentioned was $435 million in new sales, we think new exports to Canada, because they granted some more access. They raised the quotas. They didn't really get rid of their tariffs on dairy and poultry, which is their last remaining basically control they have over those imports, but they raised access, so we've got that. But there were a whole bunch of rules changes on sanitary standards for ag, biotech. There were rules about cross-border measures that should make that easier. So all in all, and in the past, the ITC really never had a way of putting numbers behind rules. They couldn't quantify them. We knew they were important, worked hard to get those changes, but they didn't really show up. Only the tariff changes did. But this time, they used some new modeling, new research, put it in their system, you might say, and came out with that number, which is positive. We're happy to see that, and we think over time, once this is implemented, this will have those very good beneficial effects and be a good addition to what we already have in NAFTA with the new USMCA provisions.
Okay, you know, these are some tough numbers to quantify. What are your thoughts on how the ITC actually did come to their conclusion and evaluate these numbers?
I think I think they did a sound job. It's a new modeling approach. They did it across all the other industries. I mean, we should focus on what we did for ag, but the fact that they got this about $35 billion of new exports includes, again, some tariff changes that we had, quantifying the new automotive rules of origin that are a part of it, and looking at all these other measures, which, again, they're hard to quantify ahead of time, but they have real-world, on-the-ground impacts of whether companies make it easier to trade with Mexico or with Canada and can move more product. So there's a reality basis to these things. We will, over time, of course, know exactly what the impacts were, but we've always long wanted to have some way of measuring the rules changes, and I think this is a good start.
Dave, how vital is it to maintain duty-free access with Canada and Mexico for our nation's producers?
Well, it's absolutely vital. When you think that the growth of NAFTA went from about $8 billion a year before NAFTA that we sold to Canada and Mexico for ag products, and now we're approaching $40 billion a year. Of course, that's, growth in the economies and the integration, but a lot of that was taking down tariff barriers, that we freed up the trade. And, of course, the U.S. became the main supplier of all the bulk commodities of corn and soybeans, beef and pork and dairy and everything else to Mexico, and the commodities where we can, and a wide variety of fruits and vegetables and processed foods to Canada, and they to us. So it's all two-way trade. So this has been vital to the growth of that trade. And again, it's been mostly the U.S. that has been supplying Mexico and Canada, not other countries. And our concern and what is looming out there is that without this preferential tariff treatment, then we'll have other countries looking to get into those markets. For Mexico, they were looking to buy other products potentially from Brazil and Argentina if we don't keep this preferential tariff treatment going. And, we're facing the same issues now in our dealings with Japan, where other countries have better tariff treatment and are starting to take away some of what's been our very good markets for us in that country. So we know the downside of what can happen. We don't have a good trade agreement, and one that we, in USMCA, are keeping modernized.
Yeah, we know producers don't want to lose their place in line when it comes to global trade. Thank you so much for joining us, Director of Congressional Relations, Dave Salmonsen. Really